The overhead announcement echoed through the terminal like a judgment, and I was sprinting, my heart hammering against my ribs with the terrified anticipation of a missed flight. I had no time to spare. Yet as I neared the entrance, my eyes snagged on a figure huddled against the concrete barrier. She was a beautiful, young, yet clearly homeless woman, her face smudged with exhaustion, clutching a tiny baby wrapped in a threadbare blanket to her chest. The raw vulnerability in her eyes stopped me dead in my tracks, cutting through my corporate urgency. Overcome by a sudden, inexplicable surge of pity, I made a split-second decision that defied all logic. I reached into my designer bag, pulled out a heavy set of brass keys, and pressed them into her trembling, cold hands. "Take these," I insisted, ignoring her bewildered look. "They open my lake house about 50 miles north. I'm flying out for high-stakes negotiations and won't be back for at least 3 months. It's warm there. Just go." I didn't wait for an answer, running to catch my plane. But the business trip spiraled into a half-year nightmare, and when I finally returned, I drove straight to the estate, expecting ruin. Instead, I walked into the garden and turned deathly pale at the impossible, ghostly sight waiting for me in the gazebo. Olivia Mercer stood at the helm of the massive family business she had inherited from her late father, a logistics empire that demanded a blood sacrifice she had willingly paid. At just 25, the crushing weight of the entire corporation had landed squarely on her slender shoulders, forcing her to trade her youth for boardrooms and balance sheets. She had poured her entire existence into the work, treating the company like a jealous lover, and as a consequence, she had never built a family of her own. She only had her mother, Eleanor, whose favorite pastime seemed to be reminding Olivia of the ticking biological clock and the importance of finding a suitable partner, a topic that grated on Olivia's nerves like sandpaper on raw skin. Olivia steered her sleek black sedan into the driveway, the tires crunching softly on the gravel. The dashboard clock glowed neon green. 11:45 p.m. She killed the engine, leaned her head back against the cool leather headrest, and closed her eyes for a stolen moment of peace. The day had been a marathon of exhaustion. Negotiations with stubborn vendors had bled into the evening hours, followed by a sudden crisis at the distribution center, and then another 2 grueling hours reviewing quarterly projections. Being 55 years old is an age when the body stops forgiving such relentless abuse. She opened her eyes and stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror, illuminated by the harsh security light. Her skin, usually glowing, looked ash gray with fatigue. Faint spiderwebs of wrinkles etched the corners of her eyes, and her sharp, professional bob felt heavy and frayed. 30 years ago, when her father handed her the reins, she was a different creature, entirely full of fire, ambition, and ready to conquer the world. Now, every single day felt less like a career and more like a desperate battle she had to win just to keep the ship from sinking. Olivia stepped out of the car, dragging her briefcase from the trunk like it contained lead bars, and trudged toward the heavy oak front door. The house greeted her with the gloomy, dim yellow light of the hallway and a suffocating silence. No, not absolute silence. From the expansive kitchen drifted the low, droning murmur of the television set. Kicking off her high heels with a sigh of relief and hanging up her trench coat, Olivia walked into the kitchen. As she had feared, her mother, Eleanor Mercer, was sitting at the massive granite island. A porcelain cup of half-finished herbal tea sat before her, the steam long gone, and her gaze was glued to the TV screen, which was broadcasting some late-night health infomercial about joint pain. "Almost midnight again, and you are just now walking through the door," Eleanor said, her voice flat, without even turning her head to look at her daughter. Her tone sounded weary, but the undercurrent of dissatisfaction was unmistakable, sharp as a tack. "When will you stop torturing yourself and finally breathe, Olivia? Do you not understand that at your age, rest is not a luxury, it is a necessity?" Olivia felt something tighten painfully inside her chest, a familiar knot of anxiety and irritation. Every single evening, it was the exact same script. Every time, the same stinging words, the same reproachful tone that made her feel like a naughty teenager rather than the CEO of a multinational corporation. She walked straight to the wet bar, pulled out a bottle of expensive Cabernet and poured herself a generous glass, filling it nearly to the brim. "That is enough, Mother." Olivia's voice came out louder and sharper than she had planned, echoing off the marble countertops. "I hear these lectures every single day, and honestly, I am too tired for it tonight." Eleanor finally tore her eyes away from the television and turned slowly to face her daughter. Her face expressed genuine bewilderment, as if she couldn't fathom why her concern was being met with hostility. "What lectures? I am just worried about you. You work like you are cursed. You give yourself no respite, no peace. And have you ever thought about why things turned out this way?" Olivia interrupted her, raising the glass to her lips and taking a large, unladylike gulp of wine. The rich, dark alcohol burned her throat, a sharp heat that matched the fire igniting in her belly. But she didn't stop. "What do you mean?" Eleanor straightened up in her high-backed chair, a look of genuine weariness and confusion appearing in her clouded eyes. Olivia set the glass on the marble countertop with a sharp clink times that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. She crossed her arms over her chest, her knuckles turning white. It was as if a massive dam had finally broken inside her soul. All the words that had been piling up like silt for years, all the buried grievances and unspoken accusations, came flooding out in an uncontrollable torrent. "Does it not matter that it was you and Daddy who made me this way?" Her voice trembled with the weight of accumulated emotion. "It was you two who separated me from Thomas, claiming he wasn't good enough for me." She grabbed the glass again and took several more nervous sips. The wine was already starting to take effect, loosening her tongue and removing her carefully constructed filters. "Thomas?" Eleanor asked, surprise reflected on her aging face. "My God, Olivia, that was over 30 years ago. He was a simple student without a dime in his pocket. He loved me," Olivia shouted, the sound bouncing off the high ceilings and making the crystal in the cabinets rattle. "He genuinely loved me for me *, but you and Daddy convinced me that I deserved better, that he wasn't good enough, that he had no ambition. We wanted a better life for you," Eleanor began, her voice defensive. But her daughter didn't let her finish. "And the next suitor was Daddy's competitor," Olivia continued, her voice becoming increasingly cracked and raw. "Too ambitious, you said. He'll strip us of everything. He will take over the family business and push us out. And then it was wrong age, or need to think about grad school, or career is more important." She sank onto the chair opposite her mother, hot tears glinting in her eyes, blurring the sight of the woman who raised her. "And then I had to take over the company." Olivia's voice dropped to a hoarse whisper, heavy with deep regret. "Daddy died and everything crashed down on me. When was I supposed to meet men? When all my time went into keeping the company at a respectable level? When I was grinding for 14 hours a day just so I wouldn't ruin what Father built?" Eleanor sat silently, pressing her thin lips into a tight line, her fingers nervously picking at the edge of a linen napkin. "Don't blame us for everything," she finally said, a spine of steel entering her voice. "We always did everything we could for you. Your father built this company from zero. We wanted you to have a future. And where is this better future?" Olivia laughed bitterly, a sound devoid of humor. "Where is it, Mama? I am 55 years old. No husband, no children, no grandchildren that you want to babysit so badly. Only a mother who constantly drives me crazy with her moralizing. Don't you dare speak to me like that." Eleanor rose sharply from her chair, her movements stiff but quick with indignation. Her face had paled, and her eyes flashed with anger. "Don't you dare. I am your mother." "So what?" Olivia stood up too, towering over the table. "Does that give you the right to control my life? You ruined it, Mama. You ruined it yourself. You are guilty," Eleanor shouted back, her voice cracking. "You missed your time. No one forced you to slave away for days on end. Other women somehow managed to work and start a family. Other women aren't carrying a multi-million-dollar business on their backs," Olivia snapped, slamming her hand on the table. "Other women don't live with parents who think no one is worthy of their precious daughter. We just wanted you not to make a mistake." "A mistake?" Olivia laughed hysterically, tears streaming down her face. "I made a mistake anyway, Mama. I made a mistake when I listened to you. Thomas now owns a chain of restaurants in 3 cities. And remember Marcus, Dad's competitor? He has 2 grown children, a successful company, and a happy life, and I am alone." A heavy silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Eleanor sank back onto the chair, as if her strength had suddenly left her. "You are being unfair," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Father and I worked all our lives to give you the very best education, the company, this house." "I didn't want the company!" Olivia screamed, her voice raw. "I wanted to love and be loved. I wanted children. I wanted to wake up next to a person who holds me, not next to a stack of documents." "Then why did you agree to lead the company?" Eleanor looked at her daughter with a challenge in her eyes. "No one forced you." "How did you not force me?" Olivia felt the tears finally break through completely. "Daddy lay in the hospital begging me not to let the company fall apart. His life was in this business. And you? You cried every day, saying that if I didn't take control into my own hands, we would lose everything. That Daddy's life would turn to dust. How could I refuse?" Eleanor turned away toward the darkened window, refusing to meet her daughter's gaze. Her shoulders were trembling. "I didn't know you thought that way," she whispered. "Of course you didn't know," Olivia answered wearily, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "You never asked what I wanted. You always knew better." Olivia finished the wine in one gulp and placed the empty glass on the table with a finality that signaled the end of the conversation. "I need to sleep. Important meeting tomorrow." She headed for the kitchen exit, but stopped at the threshold without turning around. "You are right about one thing, Mama. I missed my time, but it happened not only because I decided so. It happened because you and Father didn't let me live my own life." Olivia went up to her room, closed the door, and leaned her back against it, sliding down to the floor. Downstairs in the kitchen, the light was still on. She realized she couldn't change her mother's mind. Eleanor always believed she was right. Arguing or explaining anything was pointless. This fight, like dozens before it, would change nothing. Tomorrow morning they would speak coldly and stiffly again, pretending nothing had happened. As always, Olivia woke up with a heavy head and a bitter taste in her mouth. The wine yesterday had not been the best idea, especially before an important workday. She looked at the digital clock on her nightstand. 7 a.m. She needed to get ready. Coming down to the kitchen, dressed in her sharpest power suit, Olivia discovered her mother wasn't there. Usually, Eleanor got up early, and by this time was already sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and the morning newspaper, ready to critique the headlines. The kitchen was empty today, strangely still. Asterisk, she's probably offended after yesterday. Asterisk, Olivia thought, pouring herself a strong black coffee from the espresso machine. Guilt gnawed at her from the inside, a dull ache in her gut, but she quickly suppressed it. There was no time to deal with family dramas right now. Negotiations with new investors were ahead, and she needed to prepare mentally. She ate a hasty breakfast of dry toast, standing over the sink, and left a short, impersonal note for her mother on the marble table. Asterisk, "We'll be back late." Asterisk, then she grabbed her keys and drove to work. The office met her with the usual bustle of ringing phones and clacking keyboards. The receptionist reported on calls. Gavin Hayes, her chief of staff and trusted right hand, brought a thick folder of documents for the upcoming meeting. Olivia immersed herself in work, trying not to think about yesterday's quarrel. It was around 2:00 the afternoon when a call from the house phone flashed on her cell. Olivia frowned. Martha, the housekeeper, usually didn't disturb her over trifles. "Yes, listening," she answered, continuing to scan a spreadsheet. "Me, Mercer." Martha's voice sounded alarmed, even frightened, trembling through the speaker. "Mrs. Mercer, Miss Eleanor is missing." Olivia froze, her pen hovering over the paper, not immediately comprehending what she heard. "How do you mean missing?" Her heart gave an unpleasant lurch against her ribs. "I can't find her anywhere." Martha spoke quickly, incoherently. "She wasn't in the kitchen in the morning. I thought she was still sleeping. But when she still hadn't come out by 10, I went to check. The bed is made perfectly. She's not in the room. I searched all the rooms, the whole house, looked in the yard. I ran out to the street and called her, but Miss Eleanor is nowhere. This is all I need, Olivia muttered, standing up sharply from her mahogany desk. The folder of documents slid off the edge, scattering papers across the plush carpet, but she didn't even glance down. Martha, are you sure you checked everywhere? Absolutely, Miss Mercer. I even looked in the basement and the garage. Her phone is lying on the nightstand in the bedroom. She never leaves without it. I'll be there soon. Olivia hung up and pressed the intercom button with force. Gavin, come in, immediately. Her assistant appeared in seconds, apparently sensing the anxiety in her tone. Yes, Miss Mercer? Gavin, I have unforeseen circumstances. Olivia was already gathering items into her designer bag, her movements jerky. Her hands were trembling slightly, betraying her composure. My missing mother. I need to handle the search immediately. Reschedule all meetings. Push everything. Missing? How? Gavin asked, stunned. I don't know. Olivia cut him off sharply. The housekeeper says she hasn't been home since morning. Gavin Hayes had been with Olivia for 10 years. In that time, they had become not just boss and subordinate, but almost friends. He saw her tense, pale face and understood the seriousness of the situation. Miss Mercer, can I help with anything? Maybe organize a search party or drive with you? Olivia thought for a second but shook her head. Not yet. If I need your help, I'll call. She grabbed her bag and coat and practically ran out of the office, leaving a bewildered Gavin standing in the middle of the room. On the drive home, Olivia replayed all possible scenarios in her head, like a horror movie reel. Where could her mother be? Could she really have been so offended by yesterday's words that she decided to leave? But where? Braking sharply at a red light, Olivia dialed the number of Elizabeth Barnes, an old friend of her mother's. Hello, answered a cheerful female voice. Mrs. Barnes, it's Olivia. Is my mother with you? No, Olivia, honey. Why? Did something happen? Weariness appeared in the woman's voice instantly. No, everything is fine, Olivia lied smoothly, not wanting to raise panic prematurely. I just wondered where she went. Maybe she called you today. No, dear. Eleanor and I spoke the day before yesterday. She invited me for tea next week. Is something wrong? No, everything is good. Thank you. Olivia hung up and dialed the next number. Valentina, another friend, also knew nothing. Moreover, she was surprised by the call. Olivia, isn't Eleanor home? Strange. We talked on the phone yesterday. She was planning to tend to the flowers in the greenhouse today. Said she hadn't taken care of the roses in a long time. Thank you, Mrs. Valentina. If she happens to call you, please let me know immediately. Of course, child, you're scaring me. Is Eleanor okay? Yes, we just missed each other. Olivia lied again and disconnected. Suddenly, it hit her like a physical blow, the cemetery. Her mother often went there, especially when she was upset or wanted to be in silence with her memories. Maybe after yesterday's fight, she went to her husband's grave to complain about their ungrateful daughter. Olivia turned the car around, tires screeching, and headed toward the city outskirts. The drive took 20 minutes, which felt like an eternity stretched thin. Anxious thoughts swarmed in her head like angry bees. What if Mama felt unwell? What if something happened to her out there alone? Asterisk. I shouldn't have spoken to her like that yesterday. Asterisk. Olivia thought bitterly, gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Asterisk. I shouldn't have snapped. She's 78. She has a heart condition. Asterisk. The cemetery met her with silence and the rustle of dry autumn leaves dancing across the asphalt. Olivia practically ran along the familiar paths to her father's grave, her high heels clicking loudly in the quiet reverence of the place. Her breathing was ragged, her chest tight. The grave was well kept. Fresh flowers lay on the black marble slab, their petals still vibrant. Apparently, her mother had visited recently, perhaps a few days ago, but no one was there now. The bench was empty. Olivia sank onto the cold stone bench next to the grave, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. Tears rolled down her cheeks on their own, hot and stinging. "Daddy, how could she do this?" she whispered, looking at her father's photo etched on the monument. "Where could Mama have gone? I didn't mean to hurt her. I'm just tired. tired of pretending everything is fine. Langston Mercer looked out from the photo, stern and calm, frozen in time. Olivia remembered how he always knew how to soothe her with one look, how he found the right words in a difficult moment. "What do I do?" she asked quietly to the wind. But no answer followed, of course, only the wind whispering through the ancient oaks. She sat for a few more minutes, wiped her tears with a tissue, and stood up. She needed to act, not sit and cry like a lost child. On the way back to the car, Olivia began calling hospitals. She was shaking at the thought that her mother might have been in an accident or had a heart attack on the street. "Good afternoon. Did you have any women admitted today, approximately 78 years old?" Eleanor Mercer. "1 minute. Let me check." "No, we don't have such a patient." She called 4 hospitals. No results. Then Olivia drove straight to the police station. The desk sergeant met her without enthusiasm, clearly busy with his own affairs, barely glancing up from his paperwork. "I want to file a police report for a missing person," Olivia said firmly, trying to project her boardroom authority. "Have a seat," he muttered, pointing to a plastic chair. "When did the person go missing? This morning, or possibly during the night? You don't know for sure?" The officer looked up at her, skeptical. "This morning? I understand that legally you might want to act fast, but she is an adult." "She is 78!" Olivia's voice trembled with frustration. "She has heart problems." "All right, let's file a report." The officer sighed and took out a form. Name, age of the missing person. Eleanor Mercer, 78 years old. Description? Well-groomed black woman. Olivia tried to recall all details, her mind racing. Average height about 5'5". Gray hair, usually wears it in a bun. Brown eyes, wears reading glasses. What was she wearing? I don't know. I left early in the morning, didn't see her. Does she have memory problems? A tendency to wander? No. Olivia shook her head vehemently. No memory problems. She was always of sound mind. Maybe there was a conflict, a reason why she might have left? Olivia fell silent. Yesterday's fight floated up in memory in full color, stinging her conscience. "We had a disagreement last night, but that's no reason to disappear." "I see." The officer wrote something down, his expression unreadable. "Leave your contacts, we will look into it. But usually in such cases, people return on their own. Perhaps your mother just wants to teach you a lesson." "Teach me a lesson?" Olivia felt anger boiling inside her like molten lava. She is 78, not 17. "Nevertheless, it happens," the officer replied calmly, closing the file. "Go home, wait. If she doesn't appear in 24 hours, we will activate a wider search." Olivia left the precinct feeling devastated and helpless. She returned home where a worried Martha had already turned on all the lights, as if bright light could help bring the missing mistress back. "Nothing?" the housekeeper asked hopefully. "Nothing." Olivia walked into the living room and sank onto the sofa. "Maybe she went to one of the relatives?" "She has no close relatives except me," Olivia answered wearily. "Martha, did you notice anything strange in her behavior lately?" "No, Miss Mercer." Miss Eleanor was as usual. "True, the last few days she seemed a bit thoughtful, but I didn't attach any importance to it." Olivia took out her phone and started calling hospitals, morgues, and urgent care centers again. With every negative answer, the panic grew. In the evening, Gavin called. "Miss Mercer, how are things? Has your mother been found?" "No." Olivia's voice sounded hollow. "Gavin, cancel all my meetings for tomorrow, too. I can't think about work when I don't know where my mother is." "Of course." "Maybe organize an announcement or hire private detectives?" "Detectives?" Olivia sat up straighter. "Yes, that's a good thought. I'll handle that first thing in the morning." Olivia didn't sleep all night. She sat in the armchair in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the phone, hoping it would ring. But the phone was silent. 3 days passed since Eleanor's disappearance, and Olivia felt like she was slowly losing her mind. The police were working, but without much enthusiasm, too many missing people, too few resources. Every day, she called the precinct, and every day she got the same robotic answer. Operational search measures are underway. Please wait. Asterisk. Olivia sat in her office, staring out the window at the gray autumn sky. Untouched documents lay on the desk before her like gravestones. The computer was on, humming softly, but she couldn't force herself to work. Every time she tried to focus on numbers and reports, her mother's face floated before her eyes. The door to the office opened quietly, and Gavin entered with another folder of papers. "Miss Mercer, you need to sign." "Gavin," Olivia interrupted him without taking her eyes off the window. "Do you know any good private investigators?" Her assistant froze in the doorway. "Private investigators? You want to hire a private eye?" "The police work too slowly. I need a professional who will focus only on this case." She finally turned to him. Gavin noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the pallor of her face that makeup couldn't hide. "Do you have contacts?" "There is one man." Gavin nodded slowly. "Roy Vance. He used to work in homicide, then went into private practice. Very meticulous and reliable. My brother went to him a couple of years ago when tracking down a debtor. Found him in a week. I need him urgently." Olivia reached for her phone, hope sparking in her chest. "Give me his number." Half an hour later, Detective Roy Vance was sitting in her office. A man of about 50 with piercing gray eyes and calm manners that inspired confidence. He took out a notepad and pen. "Miss Mercer, I need your help," Olivia began, trying to speak confidently, though her voice betrayed a tremor. "My mother disappeared 3 days ago. Tell me in detail. When did you see her last?" "In the evening, the day before the disappearance," we argued. It was hard for Olivia to admit this aloud. "The next morning, I left for work early, didn't see her, and in the afternoon, the housekeeper called and said Mama wasn't home." "What was the cause of the argument?" Olivia clenched her fists under the desk. "I accused her of ruining my life. Said that because of her, I have no family. It was stupid. I shouldn't have." "Miss Mercer," the detective interrupted gently, "I'm not judging you. I need facts to understand what might have happened. Could your mother have left under the influence of emotions?" "I don't know." Olivia ran a hand over her face. "She was offended, that's for sure. But to just pick up and leave? She's 78. She has a heart condition. Does she have relatives? Friends she could turn to?" "I called everyone. No one has seen her. Friends say she didn't call." Roy Vance wrote down every word. "Money. Documents. What did she take with her?" "Nothing." Olivia felt a lump rising in her throat. "Passport is in place. Phone is at home. Money, too. The housekeeper says she didn't even take her favorite purse." "That is strange," the detective frowned. "Usually, people planning to leave take documents and money. Describe your mother to me in more detail. Habits, places she liked to visit." Olivia spent the next hour answering the detective's questions. She talked about how her mother loved visiting the cemetery, how she sometimes met friends at a cafe, how on Tuesdays she always went to church. "I will check all these places," promised Roy. "I'll also request surveillance footage in your neighborhood. Miss Mercer, I understand how hard this is for you, but try to remember, was there anything unusual in your mother's behavior recently?" "Martha, our housekeeper, said Mama was thoughtful the last few days, but I didn't attach importance to it. We barely spoke. I'm constantly at work." "All right, I will start work immediately. I'll keep you posted." The detective stood up. "And one more thing. Don't lose hope. In my practice, there have been cases where people were found a month later, or even 2. When Roy Vance left, Olivia sank into her leather chair, feeling the adrenaline drain away, leaving only exhaustion. She had hired the best detective. The police were supposedly working. Missing posters were pasted all over the city. What else could she do? The following days turned into agonizing waiting. Roy called every evening with reports, but there were no results. He checked all the cafes and churches, interviewed her mother's friends, reviewed hours of grainy footage. Eleanor Mercer seemed to have dissolved into thin air. "I checked hospitals within a 100-mile radius," the detective said, his voice crackling over the phone. "Also contacted colleagues in neighboring cities. Nothing." "How can a person just disappear?" Olivia almost screamed into the receiver, her patience fraying. "We live in the 21st century. There are cameras everywhere." "Unfortunately, not everywhere. There aren't many cameras in your residential area. The last thing I managed to establish, your mother left the house early in the morning around 6 a.m., then the trail goes cold. Olivia continued going to work because she didn't know how else to occupy herself. Sitting at home in the silence and waiting was unbearable. But work brought no relief either. She conducted negotiations, signed papers, met with partners, but all this happened as if underwater, in some unreal fog. "Miss Mercer, do you hear me?" The voice of a partner on the video call returned her to reality. "Yes, sorry. What were you saying about the delivery deadlines? Do you agree with the proposed dates?" Olivia looked at the screen, but the numbers and charts blurred before her eyes into meaningless shapes. "Yes, I agree. Gavin will prepare the documents." When the connection cut off, she dropped her head into her hands. Her thoughts constantly returned to her mother. What if Eleanor left precisely because of their fight? What if the last words Olivia said to her were so cruel that her mother decided she was a burden? She couldn't even think about that without feeling bile rise in her throat. "Miss Mercer." Gavin walked into the office with a fresh cup of coffee. "Drink. You've eaten almost nothing all week." "Thank you." She took the cup but didn't even touch the drink. "How are the searches? Has anything moved forward?" "No results." Olivia's voice was lifeless. "Vance is working day and night, but nothing. I don't know what to do anymore." Gavin sat on the edge of the desk, crossing his arms. "Maybe we should cancel the meeting with the investors or move it a few weeks later. You aren't in a state to lead such serious negotiations." Olivia sharply raised her head. Meeting with investors? She had completely forgotten. It was the most important deal of the year. The future of the company depended on it. Right. The flight is today. "Gavin, what time is it?" 2:30 p.m. "And the flight is at 6 p.m., the assistant reminded her gently. "So the flight is in 3 hours. Olivia grabbed her head. "God, I haven't even packed." "Miss Mercer," Gavin said gently, "I can go alone, or we can reschedule. You don't have to do this." "No." She stood up abruptly, smoothing her skirt. "I'm useless here anyway. The detective is working, the police are working, I'm just getting in the way, calling every 2 hours. The deal will happen. It's too important for the company. But if anything happens, Martha will be at home. She'll let me know if Mama shows up." Olivia was already gathering documents into her bag, her movements frantic. "I'll leave her all the contacts and Roy Vance's too." "Are you sure?" Gavin looked at her with doubt. "Negotiations will last more than a week, maybe 2. "I'm sure," Olivia said decisively, though inside everything clenched with fear. To leave now when her mother was missing felt like betrayal. But the company, 200 people worked there, 200 families depended on her decisions. "Gavin, order a car to the airport. I need to stop by the house, grab my things." "Okay, then see you at the airport." "Yes," she nodded, and they exchanged tense glances. At home, Olivia packed a suitcase in a rush. Martha bustled nearby, helping fold clothes. "Miss Mercer, what about Miss Eleanor?" the housekeeper asked with anxiety. "Martha, I have a very important request for you." Olivia stopped and took the woman by the hands. "If Mama appears, if there is any news, call me immediately, any time of day or night. Understood?" Of course. Don't worry. I will right away. Here is the detective's number. Here is the precinct number," Olivia wrote on a piece of paper. "If something happens and I'm not reachable, call them. You will return, right?" A plea sounded in Martha's voice. "Of course, I'll return. Maximum 90 days. But even saying these words, Olivia felt her heart constrict with pain. She called Roy Vance right from the car on the way to the airport. "Detective, I am forced to leave on a business trip for 3 months, but I will be reachable 24 hours a day if you find out anything at all." "I understand, Miss Mercer. Don't worry. I will continue the search. I have a few more leads to check." "What leads?" She gripped the phone. "Too early to say. Don't want to give false hope, but I am working. Rest assured." Olivia walked hurriedly through the airport parking lot, dragging her suitcase behind her. Gavin had already gone inside, but she lingered to answer an urgent call from Roy again. The conversation was short and fruitless. No new leads, no witnesses, nothing. Hanging up, she quickened her pace. Less than half an hour remained until check-in, and she couldn't be late. The investors wouldn't wait if she missed flight. Near the entrance to the terminal, she noticed a woman young, maybe 32, with a child in her arms. They were sitting on a concrete barrier. Something about this picture made Olivia stop. The woman was dressed in a worn coat, clearly not her size. Her hair was disheveled, but her face was surprisingly beautiful, with regular features and large, dark eyes. And the baby in her arms, quite tiny, was wrapped in a thin blanket, clearly insufficient for the autumn weather. Olivia was going to walk past. She had no time. She needed to hurry, but something forced her to linger. Maybe it was the woman's eyes, tired but full of some quiet dignity, or the way she tenderly pressed the child to herself, trying to warm him with her body. Fun 13. The unexpected act of kindness. "Excuse me?" Olivia stepped closer, her heels clicking softly on the pavement. "Is everything okay?" The woman flinched and raised a weary gaze to her. "Yes, everything is fine," she answered quietly, instinctively pressing the baby tighter to her chest. "Forgive the intrusiveness, but do you have a place to stay?" The woman fell silent for a moment, as if debating whether to tell the truth to a stranger in expensive clothes. Then she lowered her gaze to the ground. "Not right now, but we'll manage." Olivia looked at the child, a boy, judging by the blue hat, sleeping with his face buried in his mother's shoulder. He was no more than 14 months old, and suddenly a thought flashed in Olivia's mind. Asterisk. What if my mother is sitting somewhere like this too, lonely and helpless? What if someone is walking past her just as indifferently as most people are walking past this woman right now? Asterisk. Listen. Olivia dug in her purse and pulled out a heavy set of brass keys. "I have a lake house upstate, the Willow Creek Estate, about 55 miles from here. I'm flying away for a long time, several months. The house is empty. Do you want to live there?" The woman looked at her with such disbelief, as if Olivia had offered her $1 million. "What? But why? You don't know me." "And that matters." Olivia held out the keys, her hand steady. "You have a small child. He needs a roof over his head. I have that roof, and right now no one needs it. I can't just take it." The homeless woman was clearly bewildered. This is too much. The baby in the woman's arms stirred and started crying softly. The mother began to rock him, and Olivia saw her hands trembling from cold or from fatigue. She couldn't tell. "I am flying away for negotiations for 3 months. Live at my lake house for now," Olivia repeated, offering the keys again, more insistently this time. 3 months? The woman still hesitated to take the keys. "But why are you doing this?" Olivia thought about it. Indeed, why? She wasn't used to spontaneous decisions, especially like this. Letting a stranger into her home was reckless, but something inside told her it was right. Because she stumbled. Because my mother is missing right now, and I don't know where she is or if she is okay. And I want to believe that if she is somewhere in need of help, someone will be nearby and help her like I am helping you now. The woman slowly reached out and took the keys, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choking. "I don't even know what to say. My name is Maya, and this is Noah." "Olivia," she introduced herself. "Listen, I need to run. I'm late for my flight, but I'll call my driver right now. He will take you." She dialed the number of Dante, her regular driver. "Dante, are you still in the parking lot?" "Yes, Miss Mercer." "Did something happen? A woman with a small child is coming to the terminal entrance right now. Her name is Maya. Drive them to the Willow Creek Estate, please." "To the estate?" Surprise sounded in Dante's voice. "Yes." Olivia quickly dictated instructions. "And buy them everything they need. Groceries for the start. Clothes for the child. It's clear they need everything. Baby food, diapers, whatever babies need." "Understood. Everything will be done. Miss Mercer, pulling up now." Olivia turned to Maya. "You will be driven. There is everything necessary at the house. Linens in the closet, in the bedroom, dishes in the kitchen. The heating is electric. You'll figure it out." "I don't know how to thank you." Maya looked at her as if seeing an angel. "You saved our lives." "Don't exaggerate." Olivia smiled, though her soul was heavy. "Just helped." She had already turned to go when Maya called out to her. "Olivia, I hope they find your mom." "They definitely will." Olivia nodded, unable to say another word, and hurried into the terminal, blinking back tears. At the check-in counter, Gavin was already waiting for her nervously, checking his watch every 5 seconds. "Miss Mercer, where were you?" 3 minutes until check-in closes." "Sorry." Got held up. She handed her documents to the agent, her breathing still shallow from the run. While they processed the luggage, Gavin didn't take his studying gaze off her. "Did something happen?" "No. Yes. I just gave the keys to the lake house to a homeless woman with a child." Gavin stopped dead in his tracks, his mouth slightly open. "You did what?" "Gave the keys to the lake house," Olivia repeated calmly, taking her boarding pass. "They will live there while I'm gone." "But—" Gavin was clearly trying to find words, sputtering. "Aren't you afraid to let strangers into the estate? You don't know her at all. What if she, well, I don't know, steals something or turns it into a drug den?" Olivia stopped and looked at him, her eyes clear. "No, I'm not afraid. The woman isn't guilty that her fate turned out this way. I'm sure she's good." "Where does such confidence come from?" Gavin shook his head, bewildered. "Miss Mercer, you were always cautious in business, vetted every partner, and here, I just felt that I needed to help." Olivia interrupted him softly. There were no lies in her eyes, Gavin, only exhaustion and fear. "And that baby? He was cold. How could I walk past?" Gavin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, hope you're right, if only because I don't want to deal with the consequences if you made a mistake." They passed through security and headed to the boarding gate. The waiting area was crowded and noisy, a stark contrast to the quiet of her empty house. Olivia sank into a chair, feeling fatigue roll over her like a tidal wave. The last week had squeezed all the strength out of her. "You're worried about your mother. That's why you helped that woman?" Gavin asked quietly, sitting down next to her. "I don't know," Olivia answered honestly, staring at the gray carpet. "Maybe I just wanted to do something good. Maybe it's some form of atonement." "Atonement for what? For being a bad daughter? For the fact that the last words I said to Mama were cruel? For the fact that I am flying away now, instead of staying and searching for her?" "You are not a bad daughter." Gavin shook his head firmly. "You are doing what you must." "Must?" Olivia chuckled bitterly. "I've been doing what I must all my life. And here is the result. Mama is missing. I have no family. Just endless work." Boarding was announced. They stood up and headed to the gate. In line, Olivia checked her phone again. No messages from Martha or the detective. On the plane, she settled by the window. Gavin sat next to her and took out his laptop. "Let's go through the presentation one more time," he suggested. "Let's," Olivia nodded, though she absolutely did not want to think about work. For the next hour, they discussed the project that was supposed to take the company to a new level. Gavin showed charts and calculations, explained strategy, and Olivia nodded and made notes, but her thoughts were far away. The plane took off, and Olivia pressed her forehead against the cold porthole. Down below remained the city where her mother was. Or wasn't. With every day, hope melted like snow in spring. "Miss Mercer," Gavin called her. "Are you listening?" "Sorry, got lost in thought." I asked, "When do we contact Dante? I want to make sure he got that woman there." "Good thought." Olivia dialed the driver's number. "Dante, how did everything go?" "Everything is great, Miss Mercer. Took Maya and the baby to the estate, helped them get settled, then went to the supermarket, bought groceries, clothes for the kid. The woman was crying with gratitude. "Thank you, Dante. I'll transfer the money for the purchases. Don't mention it. By the way, she's a good woman, intelligent, told me a little about herself. She has a college degree, worked as an accountant, but her husband turned out to be a domestic tyrant. Had to run." "I see." Olivia felt she hadn't been mistaken in her impulse. "Dante, keep an eye on them, please. If they need anything, help out." "Of course." Hanging up, Olivia leaned back in the seat. Gavin looked at her with curiosity. Well, satisfied? Yes. Olivia smiled faintly. You know, even in such a difficult period, it's nice to realize you could help someone. That is noble, agreed Gavin, although still reckless. Every evening being at the hotel, Olivia called home. Martha always answered on the first ring as if she didn't let the phone out of her hands. Martha, any news? No, Miss Mercer, none. Did the detective call? Yes. This morning says he is checking some new theory, but nothing concrete yet. The police found nothing either. Sorry, Miss Mercer. You aren't guilty of anything, Olivia said wearily, rubbing her temples. Thank you for keeping me posted. The negotiations went hard, harder than anyone had anticipated. The investors nitpicked every number, demanded additional guarantees, and set conditions that required endless revisions. Olivia conducted negotiations on autopilot, mechanically answering questions and putting forward counter-arguments, her CEO mask firmly in place. Gavin supported her as best he could, but even he saw that his boss was holding on with her last bit of strength. Miss Mercer, you did great today, he said after another grueling round of talks that ended at midnight. Managed to convince them to lower the percentage. Yes, she answered indifferently, checking her phone for the 100th time that day. No messages. The chances that everything was okay with Eleanor decreased daily. Olivia knew the statistics. The more time passes from the moment of disappearance, the lower the probability of finding the person alive and well. It made her physically sick, but she had to pull herself together, smile at investors, discuss contract terms, pretend everything was under control. And at night, she lay in the hotel room and stared at the ceiling, replaying the last conversation with her mother in her head, every word, every intonation, and with every day, the weight of guilt became heavier, crushing her chest. 3 months turned into 4, then 5. The deal became complicated by international regulations, requiring trips to partner offices in Europe. The business trip that was supposed to be 90 days stretched into nearly 7 months. Olivia spent half a year in negotiations that were supposed to be the most important in her company's history. But the victory felt hollow. The investors turned out to be so demanding and cautious that every point of the contract was discussed for weeks. Initially, it was planned that everything would take 90 days, but negotiations dragged on. New conditions arose. Finally, the plane landed in her home city. Olivia and Gavin walked through the airport terminal with suitcases, the fluorescent lights stinging Olivia's tired eyes. The deal was closed, contracts signed. The company received investments that would allow it to expand and enter the international market. It was a victory, but Olivia felt no joy. Miss Mercer, you are amazing. Gavin walked beside her, not hiding his enthusiasm. You handled this honestly. There were moments I thought they would refuse, but you convinced them. That is your merit too, Gavin. Olivia smiled wearily and patted her assistant on the shoulder. You helped me persuade the investors, especially when it came to return on investment timelines. Without your calculations, we wouldn't have been able to convince them. Team, Gavin answered modestly. We are a team. By the way, are you going home now or to the lake house? Olivia stopped dead. The lake house? She had truly completely forgotten about it during these grueling months. The Willow Creek estate, the homeless woman and her baby. Right, I forgot I have guests living there. She smiled faintly, shrugging her shoulders. Wonder how they are. Dante mentioned a couple of times that everything was fine, but I haven't spoken to Maya since that day at the airport. Maybe home first to rest? Gavin suggested, looking at her luggage. You look exhausted. No. Olivia shook her head decisively. I'll go to the lake. I want to make sure everything is okay and get to know Maya better. After all, she's been living in my house for half a year, and I haven't really spoken to her. It feels right. They said goodbye at the exit. Gavin took a taxi, and Olivia called Dante. The driver arrived in 20 minutes, smiling joyfully as he loaded her bags. Miss Mercer, I am so glad to see you. How did the negotiations go? Successfully, Dante. Tired, of course, but the result was worth it. Let's go to the Willow Creek estate. The estate? Not home? No, I want to check how things are. By the way, how is Maya? How is the baby? Oh, everything is excellent. Dante perked up, his eyes shining in the rearview mirror. Maya is such a wonderful woman, hardworking, neat. The house is always in order, and she found a job at the local store. Noah is growing by leaps and bounds. Already started walking. Already walking? Olivia was surprised. How old was he when I left? 14 months. Now he's nearly 2. Such a sharp little boy. They drove onto the highway. Familiar landscapes flashed outside the window. The city gradually gave way to suburbs, then fields and forest. Olivia looked out the window and thought about her mother. Over these 7 months, the trail had gone completely cold. Detective Roy Vance continued working for the first 3 months, but then admitted he had hit a dead end. The police found nothing either. The case of Eleanor Mercer's disappearance was gradually moving to the archives, gathering dust. Olivia learned to live with this pain. She no longer cried every night, didn't flinch at every phone ring. She simply accepted it as a given. Her mother disappeared, and most likely, she would never see her again. This thought was unbearable, but she had to live with it. Fun 17. Life in bloom. The Willow Creek estate was located in a picturesque spot, surrounded by ancient pines. A 2-story house with a large veranda and a well-kept garden that sloped gently down to the water. Her father bought this place long ago when Olivia was still a teenager. Here they spent summers, barbecuing on the patio. Here they celebrated family holidays before the silence fell. After her father's death, Olivia almost never came here. Too many memories lived in the walls. The car turned onto the familiar country road. A few minutes later, the house appeared, and Olivia immediately noticed that something had changed. Flowers bloomed in the beds, chrysanthemums and late roses, providing splashes of color against the autumn gray. The gate was freshly painted, a crisp white. New curtains hung in the windows. The place looked lived in, cozy, breathing with life. "See," said Dante contentedly, parking the car. "Maya really looks after the house well." They got out of the car. Olivia looked around, inhaling the fresh pine air. Even the paths were swept, the grass trimmed neatly. She headed toward the house when suddenly she heard a child's laughter drifting from the garden, bright and clear like a bell. Rounding the house, Olivia came out to the gazebo that stood at the edge of the property near a small pond. What she saw made her freeze in place, her breath catching in her throat. In the gazebo, in a wicker chair, sat an elderly woman in a light dress, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. On her lap sat a toddler with dark curls, and the woman was telling him something, pointing at the ducks swimming in the pond. The child laughed, clapping his hands. Olivia felt the ground slipping from under her feet. She knew this woman. She would know her among thousands of others. "Mama?" The voice sounded hoarse, barely audible, strangled by shock. The woman raised her head and looked at Olivia. The face was painfully familiar, the same brown eyes, the same elegant nose, the same thin lips, but there was no recognition in the eyes, only mild curiosity. "What?" asked Eleanor, tilting her head. "Do we know each other?" "You said." "Mama?" Olivia took a step forward, then another step, her legs giving way, her heart pounding wildly against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Mama, it's me, Olivia, your daughter." Eleanor looked at her closely, as if trying to remember, squinting slightly, then slowly shook her head. "Forgive me, but I don't know you. You must be mistaken, ma'am." Olivia sighed heavily, not understanding what was happening. Nearly 7 months of searches, 7 months of despair and hope, and her mother had been here all this time at the lake house, 55 miles from home? At that moment, Maya came out of the house with a large pot in her hands. Seeing Olivia, she smiled radiantly. "Oh, you're back. Welcome home." She put the pot on the table in the gazebo. "Will you have lunch with us?" "I just made soup." "Maya." Olivia pointed at her mother with a trembling hand. "This woman, how is she here?" "Ah, Mrs. B." Maya looked at the elderly woman with tenderness. "She's been living with us for many months now." "Why?" The baby on Eleanor's lap waved a chubby hand at Olivia. "Maya." Olivia walked closer, her voice trembling uncontrollably. "This is my mother. Eleanor Mercer. This is my mother." Maya froze, the ladle nearly falling from her hand. "So, this is your mom?" She was surprised, shifting her gaze from Olivia to Eleanor and back again. "My God, I didn't know." She walked out of the house and disappeared nearly 7 months ago. Olivia spoke incoherently, tears already rolling down her cheeks. Police searched. Private detective. No one could find her. And I was so worried. Thought I lost her forever. Maya sank onto the bench as if her legs wouldn't hold her. "Maya, please." Olivia grabbed her hands, her grip desperate. "Tell me how she ended up here." Okay. Maya nodded, her eyes wide. "Sit down. I'll tell you everything. Dear, can you play with Noah a little longer?" "Of course." Eleanor smiled at the baby, oblivious to the emotional storm around her. "We will feed the ducks." "Yes, sunshine?" Olivia sat opposite Maya. Her hands were shaking, and she clenched them into fists to stop the tremors. "Tell me everything from the beginning." "It was a few days after you gave us the keys," Maya began. "I remember exactly 4 days past. Noah and I went for a walk to the river. There's a very beautiful spot not far from here where you can sit on the bank, and suddenly I saw this woman." "Where exactly?" Olivia interrupted. "By the bridge. She was standing in the middle of the road and looked lost. I initially wanted to walk past, but she was so scared. I went up and asked if she needed help. She looked at me with such lost eyes and asked, 'Where is the house?' I am looking for the house." Olivia listened, not breathing. I asked, "Which house?" She named the street, a number. "This street, this house." Maya pointed to the estate behind them. I was shocked. I said, "Well, I live in this house. Come on, I'll walk you." We brought her here and she started crying. She walked into the house, looked around and burst into tears, said, "I know this place. I was here. We were here with Langston." She constantly repeated that name, Langston. "Langston is my father," Olivia said quietly. "He died when I was 25, 30 years ago." "See?" Maya nodded. "She lives in the past, remembers her husband, remembers her youth, but everything that happened after his death, she doesn't remember." Olivia looked at her mother, who was cheerfully talking to the toddler. "At all?" "At all." I tried to ask her about family, about home. She described the apartment where she lived with her husband, described her work. She was a teacher, right? But about you? About the fact that she has a daughter? Nothing. As if it didn't happen. Need to show her to a doctor? Olivia wiped her tears urgently. "This is memory loss. Maybe trauma. Maybe she fell, hit her head." "I took her to a doctor," said Maya. "A week after I found her, to the local general practitioner. He said tests and scans were needed, but Eleanor refused. Was afraid of hospitals. I couldn't force her." "It's okay. I'll find a good doctor." Olivia was already making plans. "We'll do all tests, scans, find out what happened to her." They sat in silence for a few minutes. Olivia couldn't tear her gaze away from her mother. Eleanor held Noah in her arms and showed him how to throw breadcrumbs to the ducks. The baby laughed, and her mother smiled with such a soft, happy smile. "So all this time she has been living here with you?" Olivia finally asked. "Yes," Maya nodded. "I couldn't leave her alone. You understand? She was so lost, so helpless. I decided I would stay with her until someone from her family was found. I didn't know it was your mother." "And how did you live? On what?" Olivia remembered Dante talking about a job. "I found a job at a store here in the village, not far. The owner, a wonderful man, allowed me to bring Noah with me. The pay isn't big, but it was enough for us. Eleanor helped around the house, cooked, cleaned. She cooks beautifully, by the way." Maya smiled warmly. "And she watched Noah when I was at work. He got so attached to her, calls her Grandma." "Grandma," repeated Olivia, and a new wave of tears rose to her throat. She doesn't remember her own daughter, but cares for a stranger's child. "Olivia." Maya leaned forward. "I don't know what to say. I am so sorry. If I knew it was your mother, I would have contacted you immediately. You aren't guilty." Olivia shook her head firmly. "You saved her. You gave her shelter. Cared for her. Maya, thank you so huge that you didn't abandon my mom, that you looked after her all these months. Thank you." Tears appeared in Maya's eyes. "You sheltered me and Noah when we were left with absolutely nothing. You didn't even know us, but you helped. And I simply couldn't abandon an elderly woman who needed help." They hugged, both crying from relief, from happiness, from everything experienced over these months. "Maya," Olivia pulled back, "this isn't my business, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But how did you end up on the street with a child? What happened?" Maya wiped her tears and took a deep breath. "I was married to a wealthy man, Richard. We met when I was working at his company as an accountant. He was charming, generous, courted beautifully. I fell in love." She fell silent. Her gaze became distant, clouded by painful memories. "The wedding was lavish. He bought me a condo, a car, clothes. I thought it was love. But after Noah was born, everything changed. He started getting jealous of the baby, said I was giving him too much attention. And then he started hitting." "God," whispered Olivia. "At first rarely, then more and more often. He controlled my every step. I couldn't leave the house without his permission. Couldn't call friends. My parents died, and my brother lives overseas. I was all alone, and I was afraid he would kill me, or even worse, do something to Noah." Maya ran a hand over her face, brushing away new tears. "I saved money little by little, hid it, saved for 6 months, and when I saved enough for a bus ticket, I ran. Just took Noah and left while he was at work. Went to the station and got on the first bus that was leaving. Didn't even know where it was going, just went wherever my eyes looked, and then met you." "Is he looking for you?" asked Olivia. "I don't know. Probably. The store owner hired me off the books, so Richard couldn't find me through databases." Olivia thought for a moment. "You know, Maya, I have a proposal." Olivia looked her in the eyes. "I want to offer you a job in my company on normal terms with official registration and a good salary. You said you worked as an accountant." "Yes, but..." "No buts. You saved my mother, cared for her when I didn't even know where she was. I am the one who should be grateful to you. And also I want to take you all home. Mama, you, Noah, I have a big house. There's enough room for everyone. Noah will be better off in the city. More opportunities, good doctors, daycare." "Olivia." Maya looked at her with amazement. "That is too much. You have already done so much for us." "It isn't too much. It is right," said Olivia. "Mama will be with me. You will work. We'll hire a nanny for Noah for the time you're at work. And when he gets older, preschool. Everyone will be busy all together. Like a family." "Like a family," repeated Maya, and tears flowed down her cheeks again. "I have dreamed of a real family for so long." They had lunch all together at the big table in the gazebo. Eleanor told stories about her youth, about how she met Langston, how they drove down south for their honeymoon. She spoke vividly with a smile, and it seemed she had truly returned to that happy time. Olivia listened and cried, trying to do it unnoticeably. Her mother was alive, was nearby, but at the same time, she wasn't. The woman sitting opposite didn't remember her, didn't recognize her. It was happiness and tragedy simultaneously. The next day, Olivia summoned the city's best neurologist to the Willow Creek estate. The doctor conducted a thorough exam, asked many questions, and ordered a battery of tests and scans. "Judging by the symptoms, your mother suffered a thanks in advance, a mini-stroke," he told Olivia privately in the study. "It happened most likely at the moment of disappearance or shortly before. A mini-stroke can proceed almost asymptomatically. The person doesn't always even understand what happened to them, but the consequences can be serious. In your mother's case, the areas of the brain responsible for long-term memory were affected." "So, she will never remember me?" Olivia's voice trembled. "I can't say for sure. The brain is a complex system. Sometimes memory is restored partially or completely. Sometimes not. It takes time, rehabilitation, support of loved ones. I will prescribe treatment, vitamins, nootropics, and most importantly, surround her with familiar things, photographs, stories. This can help. A week later, they moved to the city house. Olivia gave Maya and Noah a separate suite on the second floor. She hired a nanny for Noah and processed Maya into the company as a senior accountant. Maya turned out to be an excellent employee, attentive, responsible, a fast learner. Even Gavin, who initially treated her with distrust, admitted a month later that it was a successful decision. Noah, while his mom was at work, stayed home with the nanny and Eleanor. The elderly woman grew attached to the boy and cared for him with such tenderness that the nanny often joked, "I have nothing to do here." Mrs. Eleanor does everything herself. Gradually, very slowly, recovery began. First, Eleanor remembered her friend Elizabeth, then the address of the house where she lived with her daughter, then Olivia herself. It happened 3 months after the move. Olivia came home from work, and her mother met her at the threshold with a smile, holding a photo album. "Olivia, my daughter," she said simply, pointing to a picture of Olivia's graduation. "How I missed you." And they hugged, both crying from happiness. Eleanor didn't remember the details of the last 30 years, but she remembered the main thing, that she had a daughter whom she loved. Now they all lived together in the big house. Maya worked and gradually gained confidence in herself. Noah grew into a healthy and happy boy. Eleanor was recovering and remembered something new every day. For the first time in many years, Olivia felt she had a real family, not the one dictated by obligations and duty, but one created by love and mutual support. I'm really glad you're here and that I could share my story with you. If you liked it, show me by liking the video and subscribing to my channel, Karma's Coils. Let's see how many of us there are. Write in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is. I'm so curious to know where all you wonderful people are tuning in from. If you want to support me a little extra, you can also send a small donation. I share new life stories for you every single day.